Hey Cross Culture, it's our last Tuesday Truth in Titus. I'm really excited for us to kind of pull some wrapping up comments together and maybe even look at another book for our next time around. Let's dive in. Titus is going to conclude here by making some pretty stern comments towards divisive people. He's just been talking about the peacefulness that should mark us in our good works, having been brought from the world of hatred into the world of peace by the work of God. Now, talks about a particularly unpeaceful type of person that can exist in our churches, and that's a divisive person. Before he jumps into that, he talks about how we need to just in general avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, dissensions, and quarrels about the law. And that's an interesting comment there because there were lots of side conversations going on that were distracting the church from the main things of the gospel and the holy word. This can actually exist in our life still, maybe not like the exact same things. But in our world, it's increasingly true for people to be pushing beyond the gospel to other matters that are secondary to the gospel and making those the main thing. We should always be careful for ourselves to think, am I making something besides the gospel the main thing I'm focusing on in my life? There's also people that will begin to forsake the basic teachings of the faith because they start going through suffering. Today, we oftentimes call that deconstruction, where people will start pulling out things that they've believed in their life and examining them and seeing if they're true. A little bit of that can be good, to always examine what we believe to the scriptures. But if we're no longer believing that God's word is inerrant and holy and binding and getting our answers from the scriptures and going instead to blogs or to influencers or to folks that are just spouting some other form of wisdom, some other mystic's higher knowledge, we should be really, really warned by this passage that focusing on those other things will have massively bad consequences in our life. And I'm old enough now in my mid-30s that some of my friends are going down that road. And I want you to just look in the face and realize the gospel needs to remain the central thing as I live my life out for the Lord. All right, so let's look back in here. You see there's this type of person that Titus addresses, a person who stirs up division, the opposite of a peaceful person. There are some people that after warning him once and then twice, we are to have nothing more to do with them. There are some people that the best thing to do after warning them once and twice is actually to remove them from your church, to label them as a divisive person, and to have nothing to do with them until they come and ask for forgiveness. And that category isn't super common, but it's an important one to have in mind. Because even in our group of churches in Sovereign Grace, we've actually had to walk through this, as even some of the folks that were with us at the very beginning began to slander and gossip and tear down godly men in our denomination, to the point where our leadership team had to even say that this is a divisive person that should not be listened to. Why do we do that? Not because we're just desperate to protect ourselves, but because God's word tells us to do that in Titus. So it's important that we recognize that we need to aim for peace. And when there is a divisive person amongst us after we've warned them, we should have nothing to do with them. Now in the final comments here in the book, we see a bunch of people named. When I send Artemis or Tychicus to you, do your best to come to me at Nicopolis, for I've decided to spend the winter there. Do your best to speed Zenas the lawyer and Apollos on their way, see that they lack nothing. And let our people learn to devote themselves to good works, so as to help cases of urgent need and not be unfruitful. All who are with me send greetings to you. Greet those who love us in the faith. And so those last, sections of the epistles we can sometimes gloss over because it's like filled with weird names and stuff. But the reality is it's important that we read those. Those are real people, and they're really in partnership together. You hear how these people in Crete were supposed to give money to them as they went on their way. They're supposed to receive them. They were praying for each other. They were working together. It's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for our partnership in Sovereign Grace. where you even can go on missions trips like we did last year to Costa Rica to strengthen Pastor Chesby's labors. Or perhaps in the future, we can go to some of our Covenant Mercies locations and strengthen them there. And in this spring, we actually have a great opportunity, which should be happening right around the time of this video's release, where we'll be gathering with our churches in our region in the Life Together conference to have real relationships with real people outside of our local church. That's something that is throughout the New Testament, and it's something that we should continue to steward and foster today. Love for other Christians in other places across the globe, and especially those that are in partnership with us in Sovereign Grace. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed Titus. We'll see you next time on Tuesday Truth.